Hello, everyone. Good morning. We are still reading this Jewish folklore. Yeah, Lilith's Cave. We'll be right back. Welcome to Jevim's Research Channel. Be advised that this channel is not for anyone under the age of 18. Also, the research and discoveries of this channel should not ever reflect the personal opinion or views of Jevim or her team unless publicly stated. Please understand that the opinions of the audience is also not a reflection of what or how Jevim feels. Let's bring a curious mind and open heart to these spaces for educational purposes only. Hey everyone. Hello, good morning. What is this morning? Tuesday. All right, so we are going to do some Paradise Lost bibliomancy sortes. Okay. Eternias for Lavinia disespoused, or Neptune's ire, or Juno's, that so long perplexed the Greeks, and Cytherea's son. If answerable style I can obtain of my celestial patroness, who begains her nightly visitation unimplored, and dictates to me slumbering, or inspires. Very interesting. Very interesting. I don't know what this is referencing to, but wow. Easy, my unpremiated verses, since first this subject for heroic song. Please me, long choosing and beginning late. Not sedulious by nature to indate. Wars hitherto the only argument, heroic deemed chief mastery to dissect. Very interesting. I desperately need to read this front to back. Desperately need to read it front to back. However, the sortes has been super cool. Okay, so Lilith's Cave, a Jewish folk tale of the supernatural. Again, we are invoking the power of the Schwartz. Let's see. See here, Howard Schwartz. The power of the Schwartz. Where did we leave off? The door to Gehenna, which was page 68. Can you all hear me? Okay. Oh no, I gotta borrow it. Gotta borrow it first. There is a Wizard of Oz sing song going through my head right now. Need to get to, where are we at? I do encourage you to go and look for, gotta get to 68. There we go. Go read the previous ones. Yesterday, the one called The Finger was very much probably the root of Disney's Corpse Bride. Absolutely. Okay. Hey, EDM. Good. You can hear me good. Okay, good. That is great. I have warm tea here. Okay. So, once again, why are we reading this book? Well, because I recently watched a video. Let's get back over here. I recently watched a video again that had the interview that Oprah was doing, like, back in the late 80s, early 90s. Oprah did an interview with this Jewish girl who was a survivor of satanic ritual abuse. She mentioned this book, and of course I wanted to dive into it because she said, like, if you want to know what's going on in these dark rituals, you can read this book. Well, it's a bunch of little small tales. So we'll get into it, and all you have to do really is to, to verify what I'm saying. You can Google it or whatever. Okay, so we're gonna get into it. We're trying to make it along so you can read along. Okay. There once was an older man who married a young bride. His wealth was very great. An older man who married a young bride. His wealth was very great, as was his desire for his young wife. But she cared only for his fortune. For the man himself she felt nothing. Perhaps because she was young and he was old, will you think? This man was very positive or possessive of his wife, and he never let her out of his sight. Control freak a bit, and she began to feel that she had been trapped in a golden cage. Now the wealthy man had one servant whom he trusted completely. This steward had served him for many years and had never betrayed him. It happened that urgent business called the man away from home, and he entrusted his wife to his loyal servant. He told her that she could pass the time exploring the great mansion, but he warned her in the strictest terms that under no circumstance was she to open a particular door in the courtyard. Oh my gosh. This is like so common. You can go everywhere, but not this one. You can eat off any tree, but not this tree, right? Okay. Testing women. It's really weird. Really weird. Okay. And he warned the servant as well. Any other rooms, however, were available to them. Then the man kissed his wife goodbye and set out on his journey. Now this young woman had grown lonely in that vast house, never seeing another but her husband and his servant. And because she did not care for her husband, she had began to have fantasies about the handsome steward. Well, who's seen that coming? So it happened that no sooner had the husband's carriage set off than she felt flushed with desire for the servant and decided to seduce him. Shameful woman. At first, the steward did not recognize her intentions, but her behavior became increasingly brazen. On the first night, she let her hair down in his presence. On the second, she appeared to him wearing a robe. On the third, she saw to it that the robe slipped open. On the fourth, she wore nothing beneath it. By the fourth night, the poor steward was fully in the power of his lust. So when the robe slipped open on the night and he saw her naked, he gave in to her without thinking and possessed her as Adam and Eve. Wow, we are really demonizing that little young bored broad. Mm-mm-mm. Only afterward did the full meaning of his sin become clear to him. He turned his face to the wall and sobbed, but the woman felt no grief. She's like, nope, not at all. Okay. And now that she had conquered the steward, she began to wonder about the door her husband had forbidden her to open. This thought took root in her mind with a persistence of an obsession. While the servant mourned his unfaithfulness to his master, the woman slipped out of the room. She lit a torch and began to explore the mansion, moving toward the courtyard and the forbidden door. And the steward was so lost in his emotions that he was unaware of her absence. Oh my God. They I don't know of a man that's ever cried after sex like that. I mean, okay. So it was that the forbidden door drew her to it like a moth to a flame. And when the steward finally came to his senses, he discovered that his master's wife was no longer there. He sighted her in the courtyard, and he suddenly realized that she had already reached the forbidden door, where she stood like Eve before the tree of knowledge. Oh my gosh. Do I have gasping? I need gasping. I thought I had a gasp. Oh, we could boo her. Should we boo her? Nah. Let's just do a snake. Yeah. Yeah, because the snake and Eve are all evil. All is evil. This sight left him petrified. He watched in a daze as she reached beneath the vines that had grown over the door and found the handle. She turned it. The vines restrained her at first, but she pushed with all her might and tore them loose. The door swung open. A hand reached out, grabbed her, and pulled her inside. The door slammed shut. At that instant, the frozen man came back to life. He rushed to the door and tried to open it, but it was locked. When the master finally returned home, he found neither his wife nor his steward and began to search through the house. He heard a moaning sound and found the poor steward sobbing to himself. At that moment, the master knew that his wife must have opened the door. He shook the steward, demanding to know what had happened, and when the steward nodded to confirm it, the husband fell into a terrible rage and beat him mercilessly. Oh, goodness. When the livid husband had vented his wrath, he demanded to know exactly what happened. Since the steward could not bear to reveal their sin, he told his master that his wife had secretly left her room at night and gone to the courtyard. He said that when he had discovered that she was missing, he had hurried after her but arrived too late. And he told his master of the hand that had reached out for an instant. The door had opened. When the husband pulled the steward up, stared into his eyes, and told him that the door his wife had opened was none other than the door to Gehenna, where the souls of the wicked were tortured, the very gate to hell, the servant realized that his master had known this all along and had been afraid to say anything, lest curiosity overcome them. And the servant's grief over his betrayal was even greater. Later that night, the master became calm again. He told the steward that he was prepared to forgive him, although he could never redeem himself in his eyes because of what had happened. To the steward, this was the mildest of punishments, and he knew that the bitterness at his own failure could always be even greater. When the master told the steward how it had come to pass that such a door had been found there, and this is the tale that he told. By birth, I was a common man, and when I was younger, I was a hunter. Once, when hunting in a forest, I found a young man laying half frozen in the snow. I did everything I could to warn him, and in this way I saved his life. When the young man was restored to his senses, he told me where he lived. I helped him to his home and found that it was more like a palace. That is, when I learned that the young man's father was none other than Asmodeus, king of the demons. When he learned how I had saved his son's life. He told me that from that day on I would be a wealthy man and live like a lord, and he gave me this mansion. But he also warned me that one door in the courtyard was never to be opened, for it if it were, disaster would surely occur. I asked him why, and he finally revealed the reason. So that I might be spared from finding out myself, he told me that it was the door to Gehenna, the very gate of hell, and whoever entered there was doomed. And he explained that there were two entrances to hell in this world, one there in the courtyard and another one far off in the forest. The steward listened to this tale in amazement and at the end asked only one question: why did his master accept a horse with which a door, with such a door in it? A house, sorry, why did I say horse? Dyslexia. And the master replied, only in this way could I receive the great wealth I had always lusted after. Nor did I fear the door because I knew what was behind it, nor was my wife in danger as long as I was with her. But when I had to leave, I thought it best to warn her of the door's danger. That was my mistake. If I had said nothing, surely nothing would have happened. But that is why I did not kill you, for I know deep down that I am to blame. Hmm. Don't cut off your nose to spite your face, basically. That night, the steward had difficulty sleeping. Half the night he tossed and turned. Just before dawn, he finally fell asleep. As soon as he did, he had a vivid dream. In the dream, the steward was ordered to go to Gehenna and find his master's wife. He packed at once and left, leaving his master a note saying that he would come back only if he succeeded in finding her. And he set out on a long journey. In the dream, he found a clue that led him onward. It was a turtle shell, and he suddenly realized that it formed a map. So he followed that map and it led him to the remote forest. At first, he was reluctant to enter there, but he knew that his life was worth nothing unless he redeemed himself. So he walked into the dark forest, dark and dense, and before long he was completely lost. This time, when he looked at the symbols inscribed upon the shell, the lines were blurred in his vision, and it seemed that no matter where he went, he was only going in circles. He could not find even a hint of a path. Finally, in frustration, he cast the shell against the ground. At that very instant, a head and legs emerged from what had been a hollow shell, and the turtle scurried away. This miracle left the man dumbfounded and made him realize how precious the shell was. He raced after the turtle, but it disappeared in the forest. He had let the magic turtle go. All at once, the world seemed to grow dark. The sun had set, and he had not even seen it go down. And it was then that he really became afraid, for it seemed as if there were no way out of that dark place. Fear and exhaustion led the man to seek out a place to sleep. He saw a large and prominent tree and sat down against its trunk. The steward was starting to feel drowsy when something cold and wet fell on his eyes. He jumped up, but it was too late. Uh-oh. He was he was blind. In terror, the man wiped his eyes and smelled the substance that had fallen on them. It was blood. Ooh. So blinding and lost in that desolate place, the steward realized that he was being punished for his sin, and he felt that his death was near. Still, he found the strength to stagger away from the bleeding tree. But when he tripped and fell into a pit. The bottom was covered with leaves, which softened the fall. He pulled himself up and he tried to crawl out, but he could not. He was trapped. So he lay down in a stupor. Finally, a ringing sound aroused him. It sounded like a woodcutter in a distance. At first, he was filled with hope that someone might find him there in the pit. But then the ringing sound grew louder and louder until it was like thunder. The man became confused and wondered if they were dead or alive. He knew that in any case he could not escape, so he lay there, awaiting his fate. Just then the chopping sound ceased, and the man heard the earth-shaking crash of a giant tree being felled. Hmm. A chill of terror passed through his body, and he realized that whoever the woodcutter was, his size was far greater than that of any mortal man. He trembled and shook in the bottom of the pit like a calf awaiting to be slaughtered. Oh, God. All at once he heard the sound of branches breaking and heard the sound of trees snapping. Under the weight of giant steps, coming closer to the edge of the pit, the servant said his prayers and prepared himself to die. Just then a thunderous voice bellowed, "Who are you, and what are you doing there?" "I am a man, blinded by a bleeding tree," the poor steward replied. "I am lost in the forest. Help me, please, to find a way out." "Ah, the bleeding tree," the giant roared. "Every day there is another victim. But fear not, for I myself was once blinded by it. Then I tried to cut it down. A man such as yourself saved me by bringing me the herb that can cure blindness. And when I recovered my sight, he showed me where this herb grows, and I always carry it with me." These words, even though they echoed like thunder, sounded like a mother's lullaby to the terrified man. He reached out for the herb, and the giant gave it to him. And when he rubbed it into his eyes, it was as if dark veil had been lifted. And he looked up and saw that the giant was indeed as tall as the great trees of the forest, but kindly and he thanked him with all his heart for saving his life. "Where do you want to go?" roared the giant, and the tone was not bellicose, but even if he whispered, the sound would have terrified any man. "I must find the way to Gehenna, for my master has sent me there," the man replied. "But those who go to Gehenna are not lost," said the giant. "Neither are they of the living. Are you a living man or not?" "I am living," the man shouted with all his strength. "I am on a mission to find my master's wife, who is in Gehenna. Can you tell me how to get there?" "If I were you, I would turn back and go the other way," bellowed the giant. "But if that is where you want to go, here, come with me." And with that, the giant bent down and lifted the man out of the pit with one hand. At first, the man closed his eyes in terror, but when he opened them, he saw that the giant was taking great strides, which seemed to span miles. All at once, he found himself standing on the earth again. Before a glowing gate, the giant roared, "This is the gate that you seek." And when the man turned to thank him, the giant was already gone, and only his thunderous footsteps could be heard. Wow. In great confusion, the steward approached the gate, touched it, and badly burned his hand. Had he came all this way at such a great risk only to be turned back at the gate of Gehenna? At that moment he heard many voices sobbing, and looking up as he saw a line of wraith-like beings coming out of the forest, whipped downward by an angel. The man could barely believe his eyes and ran to hide behind a tree, for there he saw the angel and his victims reach the gate, which the angel struck once with his fiery, "We got angels," whip so that it swung open. Then the angel forced all the others inside, even though they tried to resist. But they were no match for his whip, and the steward knew that if he entered there, on his own he might never escape, and that the punishment awaiting those wraiths might be visited on him as well. But he dismissed these thoughts at once and rushed inside under the very arm of the avenging angel, slipping in just as the gate slammed shut. No sooner had he stepped inside than he almost fell into an abyss, for he had arrived on the bridge of Gehenna, which was no wider than a thread. Wow. The man saw how even the spirits of the dead had to struggle to cross the bridge, and now and then one tumbled over it. His diminishing scream, the last they heard of him. How then was a living man to cross there? He clung with all his strength and somehow made his way to the other side. Once across, he was greatly relieved, even though that place was Gehenna. By then, the steward looked up and almost fainted. He saw bodies strung everywhere, hanging by their eyelids. Ooh, their ears, their hands, and their ooh. Some women hung by their nipple. Ooh, their shrieks were beyond description. Even in his darkest fears, the man had not expected punishment like that, and he sought refuge in that place of horror. In the distance, the man saw a palace. Although it was surrounded with flames, he ran to it, for there was nowhere else to hide. When he reached the entrance, he saw that it had been constructed of gold and was more precious than any palace on earth. Flames of red and blue surrounded the walls, so that the whole palace seemed to be burning inside a great flame. The man burned his hand as he opened the door, and when he stood on the threshold, he felt the heat of the door rising up through the soles of his shoes. These are like some little Nicky stuff. This is what I'm visioning, as I'm reading this. Okay. But it was what he saw made him forget his pain. Inside the golden chamber, seated on a golden throne, was his master's wife. She was wearing garments of gold, and all the objects surrounding her were made of gold as well. Many servants attended her, some pouring wine into a golden goblet, others bringing food on a golden tray. The steward was completely dumbfounded. Is this how she, the greatest sinner he knew, was punished? She was great. She's the greatest sinner he knew of, right? Because oh God. Oh my gosh. Okay. Just then the woman looked up. She saw the steward and recognized him, and she beckoned for him to come to her. The man came forward in great fear because he dreaded that he might fall under her power again. And she said, "How is it that you have come here?" He replied, "I vowed to find you, to redeem myself in the eyes of my master, whom I betrayed with you. But how is it that you are held in such high esteem here while the others are tortured in such terrible ways?" And she replied, "It is not as it appears. You believe that I am a queen here, surrounded by slaves, but the truth is that I am being tortured in this place. Everything, as you can see, is made of gold, but all the gold is molten, and every movement I am burned. When standing up, when lying down, when eating, when drinking. The wine is molten. The food is burning jewels. There is no sustenance here, no respite." That's awful. The steward realized that what she said was true, that her opulence was a false illusion, and that she was suffering as much as those hanging by their hair. Then the woman spoke again, and she said, "Go now, return to the world. Tell them what awaits them here. Take my ring with you, and they will know that it is true." With that, she took off her ring and dropped it into her golden goblet. Then she put the goblet inside a marble vase and gave it to the man. He looked inside and saw the burning ring and heard a hiss. Then, trembling in the horror of that place, he took his leave and ran as fast as he could to the entrance of the palace. And the moment he stepped out of the doorway, he awoke. He found himself lying in his own bed in his master's home, which he had never left. The man was staggered to learn that all along exhausting journey and had been a dream. But then he looked up and he saw a strangely familiar marble vase on the table next to his bed. He jumped up and looked in the vase, and there, to his complete astonishment, was the golden goblet with the white hot ring from Gehenna. The steward picked up the vase and hurried to show his master. And when his master saw that burning ring and heard the tale, he knew it was true, even though it had been a dream. And all who saw that ring knew that the warnings of the prophets were not idle talk, and sought refuge in the ways of the righteous. And that is from 13th century France. Wow. So, yeah, these are all bastardized tales of women in the Hebrew literature. What do you think about that? That's like insane to me. It is brutal. These are all brutal, horrific tales. Horrific tales to keep women subservient and seen as, the demons. Yeah. When statistically, it's not the women. Okay. We've only been going about 30 minutes. So let's read Devil's Fire. I'm not really sure how long it is, but I think it'd be cool. Yeah, for sure. For sure. How's everybody doing out there? Is it cold out there? Is it frigid? I'll have to change. Uh-oh. Okay, you all, you ready? Okay, Devil's Fire. I fell into a burning ring of fire. And it burns, burns, burns. Okay. Once a ragged traveler made his way to Jerusalem. He found refuge in the night in the home of a pious Jew. And after they had shared a modest meal, the traveler offered to regale his host with tales about his travels. The Jew replied, "Yes, I would like nothing better than to hear your strangest tale, a tale of the most extraordinary thing that has occurred in your travels." The wanderer grimaced when the Jew said this, and he looked him in the eyes. "My most unusual experience took place in a Persian city, where it was custom to offer human sacrifice." Ooh, dun dun. Yeah. How old is this story? Now, in our day, such things are not common. Not common. Does it say it doesn't happen? Just okay. Yet the custom itself is not as disturbing as the fact that those who are sacrificed go gladly to this faith and sometimes even offer themselves to be burned in the fire. Do they know about what scopolamine does to people? I don't think they know. Well, they need to know because you can, yeah, like that zombie juice. Okay. Okay. Now the Jew, whose name was Rabbi Zechariah, could not believe that such a thing was possible. For who would willingly abandon his own life? Yet the wanderer insisted it was true, saying, "This is the strangest part of all. The reason the people do not fear being sacrificed is because 1 month later, in every instance, the one who was consumed in flames comes back to the city alive and well. Those returning always wear pure white robes and report that they have traveled to another kingdom where they were well received and greatly rewarded. They seem so calm and peaceful that all who see them are convinced that the fire holds no danger. Instead, they believe it is a doorway to another world and one in which their lives are abundant." Who's this sound like? Does this sound like a mystery? A death and resurrection mystery? Oh my God, Sarah McLaughlin, where are you? Come at night, where they sleep with voodoo dolls, and the dark nuns roll. Okay, okay. But how do they survive the fire? The rabbi asked. For such a thing cannot occur, the stranger replied. You are right. And yet I myself have seen one who was consumed in fires return 1 month to the day after his death. Otherwise, I too would never have believed it possible. And when Rabbi Zachariah heard this, he was awestruck, for he saw that the traveler was a man of his word and even something of a prophet. This bleak tale filled the rabbi with sorrow because he refused to believe for a moment that those who returned were the same as those who had been sacrificed. No, some kind of deception had taken place. Perhaps an evil spell had been cast. And the tale continued to haunt the rabbi long after the wanderer had departed for still another land. I'm just going to drop in real quick and tell you that there's people that die and come back 1 month later. Okay, bye. At last, Rabbi Zechariah decided that he must somehow try to free those people from the terrible delusion that the flames offered them no danger. So he set out for that very city in remote and distant Persia. 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 Isn't that where the hashishes were? The hashishes. They were, here comes Rabbi Captain Savaho. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. In order to get there, he joined a caravan going that way. The caravan, which consisted of 3 dozen camels and the same number of riders, crossed the vast desert that loomed in every direction like a great sea. It took them more than 6 months, but at last they reached their destination. When Rabbi Zechariah, Captain Savaho, made his way to the center of the city, he saw that a great crowd had formed there, but he could not see what was taking place. Then he noticed that one of those at the edge of the crowd was observing something in a small mirror, which he held above his head. The rabbi asked the man if he might also peer into the mirror, and the man handed it to him just in time for the rabbi to see a young man cast himself into a mighty fire. Wow. Where he was quickly consumed amid many terrible screams. This sight horrified the rabbi, and who saw for himself that the young man had offered no resistance but had gone willingly to his death. Rabbi Zechariah returned the mirror to the man and told him that he was a stranger passing through the city. He asked him why that young man, with so much to look forward to, had willingly leaped into the flames. And the man replied, "You can find out for yourself. Simply remain in the city, and 1 month from today, go to the home of that young man. Then you will understand." So Rabbi Zechariah, Captain Savaho, decided that he would indeed remain in that city for the allotted time in hopes of resolving the mystery. So he stayed at an inn and passed the days strolling in the marketplace, trying to learn more about the strange custom of self-sacrifice. What is this? What? But he found that the people were reluctant to talk about it, and if they said anything at all, it was that he must find out for himself. You can't find the mystery. You can't. You have to experience it. The mystery is experienced. It's not learned. It's not. Okay. When a month passed, Rabbi Zechariah, Captain Savaho, went to the modest hut in which the young man had lived with his wife and family. Entering, he saw that many residents of the city had gathered there, including the man who had lent him the mirror. Rabbi Zechariah took a place next to this man and asked him to point out the young man's wife and children. When the man singled them out, Rabbi Zechariah saw that neither the wife nor the children were in mourning, even though the young man had departed from this life long before his time. The rabbi could not understand this at all, and he was asked the man's children why they did not weep. The children told him that their father had simply gone to another place, one in which there was always enough to eat and nothing to fear. So too were they certain that he would return from there to visit them that very night. And they invited the rabbi to remain among them as their guest and help celebrate their father's homecoming. So it was that the Rabbi Zechariah waited with them, and at the stroke of midnight they saw a man dressed in a white robe approaching the house. Even before he came inside, the children all began to cheer, for they were certain it was their father coming back to them. And when the door opened, Rabbi Zechariah saw, to his complete astonishment, that the man who stood there was none other than the very one who had cast himself into the fire a month before. The robe he wore was woven from the finest silk, and upon his countenance was a look of great joy. The man embraced and kissed his family and told them that all was well with him, far better than he had ever known. He encouraged them to join him by passing through the fiery gate. The rabbi was horrified to hear him say this, for even though the man appeared to be the one whose death he had just witnessed, he still was not convinced it was the same man, and he vowed not to rest until he found out the truth. Wow. When the man took his leave that evening, his family accompanied along the road. Rabbi Zechariah Savaho followed them to the foot of the mountains, which was the place where those who had returned from the beyond always parted ways with their families. But even after the man's wife and children had turned back, promising to join him shortly, Rabbi Zechariah continued to follow him. He remained a safe distance behind as the man climbed up a path to a long ledge that could not be seen from below. There the man stood in a certain spot and said, "Open ye fiery gates in the name of he who commands you." Kind of like an open sesame. That's what it reminds me of. Yeah, open sesame. Yeah. In that instant, a great creaking was heard, and the stone wall of the mountain opened as if it were a door, and the man hurried inside. And as soon as he entered, the stone door closed, and the mountain was restored to its original shape. Oh, we got gnomes. We got gnomes in the mountains. Dwarves. Okay. Rabbi Zechariah, who had witnessed this wonder, could barely believe his eyes. Yet at the same time, the use of the spell confirmed that he had believed all along that sorcery was somehow involved. He decided that in order to discover the truth, he would have to enter the passageway himself, even though it brought his life into danger. So Rabbi Zechariah climbed to the very same place he had seen the man stand and spoke. The very same words. Then, just as swiftly, the stone door swung open and Rabbi Zechariah hurried inside. Inside the mountain, it was pitch black and thick with the smoke and stench of brimstone. From where he stood, Rabbi Zechariah thought he had heard distant screams and shrieks, and fear almost drove him to escape while he still could. But he restrained himself. He would not turn back until he had discovered the truth. This eagerness to find the truth. Then suddenly, Rabbi Zechariah heard mocking laughter nearby. In terror, he felt along the wall with his hand, searching for a place to hide. And just as the voices come closer, he discovered a crevice that was barely wide enough for him to enter. He tried to breathe quietly and wished he could still be loud. He could still the loud beating of his heart. From where he was, he could see the man who had come back from the dead, accompanied by a legion of fearsome demons. A terrible fire burned in the demon's eyes, and the fire filled with hate. And now Rabbi Zechariah saw how the very same fire had begun to glow in the eyes of the man who had claimed to have escaped unscathed. And as Rabbi Zechariah watched, the man's body was transformed into that of the most terrible demon of all, Satan, the devil himself. The devil. It worked again, the devil said. More victims will be coming soon. And when the demons heard this, they all laughed hideously. That is, when Rabbi Zechariah finally understood the truth. In each case, the devil had disguised himself as the latest victim of the flames and had gone back to convince the others to destroy themselves as well. Rabbi Zechariah felt sickened by the terrible deception, and he stood once and for all that there was nothing the evil ones could not stoop to do in order to dominate the world. At this time, Rabbi Zechariah had barely breathed for fear of being discovered. But when the horde of demons finally passed, he moved quickly, feeling his way along the wall again until he came to the place where he had come in. As soon as he reached the rock that had swung open, he whispered the magic words, still terrified that he might be overheard. But the rock did not budge. He decided that he had not spoken loud enough, and he tried again. Still nothing happened. Rabbi Zechariah began to panic. Could it be that the words worked only from the outside, not from within? He desperately repeated the magic words one more time, but without result. Then a cold truth sunk in. He was trapped in the underground cavern of the demons, who would, without a doubt, find dozens of ways torturing him should he fall into their hands. In the distance, the rabbi still heard the perverse laughter of the demons, and he decided that his only hope lay in following them to learn what magic words worked from within. So he let their voices lead him down one passage to another, and he kept wondering how they could see where they were going, for he was as good as blind in that dark cave. As he walked, the screams and shrieks that Rabbi Zechariah had first heard grew louder and louder until they pierced his ears. Somewhere nearby, multitudes were being tortured. The sound was so terrible that Zechariah shivered with fright. Yet he forced himself to go on. Little by little, he found that he was becoming used to the dark, and he thought he could make out something faintly glowing in the distance that made it possible for the first time to see the dim passage before him. He wondered what it was that burned so darkly and shed so little light. Suddenly, the rabbi almost stepped into a great pit. He teetered on the edge for a terrifying moment, then found his balance and backed away. That is when he saw how the path had taken a very sharp turn, leading around the edge of that abyss. The shrieks from below were so terrible that Rabbi Zechariah, could not bear the din. Looking around, he saw the young man who had leaped into the flames. He was in chains, and he was being dragged by dozens of demons. He screamed hysterically while the demons jested among themselves. While Rabbi Zechariah watched, the demons strung their victims upside down from a long pole. Then, as he pleaded for mercy, they dropped him into the bonfire of dark flames, where he screamed in even greater agony. They kept him there for an unbearably long time while Rabbi Zechariah watched in horror. Then they pulled him out again, waited for a brief moment, and then they pitched him into the flames again, over and over, until they finally tired of their torture. At last, they pulled him up and left him hanging upside down. Any human would be dead by now. Yeah, because I'm not getting it. Yeah, any human would be dead by now. Oh, these are just stories to scare little children into acting correct, how the parents want them to act. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. And when they were gone, Rabbi Zachariah creeped up to him. Because he had gone to the young man's house, he knew his name. And when he was as close as he dared to come without being seen by the others, he called him out. Oh no, what just happened? Did y'all see that? Yeah, it's weird. It went, where did it go? And then now it just made me lose my place, y'all. I'm sorry. Okay. Hearing his name, the poor young man groaned, "Who is it?" And Rabbi Zechariah whispered that it was one of his own, a human being, one who had witnessed his plight. He asked the young man to tell all that had happened to him since he had leaped into the flames. Then the young man told this terrible tale. You ready? Okay. At the moment I leaped into the flames, my soul was lost, and I found myself falling a great distance until I landed in a sea of boiling oil. The oil scathed me to the depth of my soul. This is wild. Isn't it? Yeah. I died 1,000 deaths, but I could not die for good. For though my body had perished in the flame, my soul was imperishable, yet it is also subject to unimaginable pain. At last I was dragged out of that oil by burning pincers, and since then the other tortures have never ceased. Zachariah was horrified to hear this. Then he told the young man how the devil had taken on his very image and tried to convince his family to follow in his footsteps. The poor man groaned with more pain than when he had been thrown in the flames. He said, "Please, I beg you, see to it that they do not, for their souls would be lost as well." And the rabbi replied, "I want to warn them and all the others, but how can I get out of here? The spell that opened the boulder in the mountain does not work from within." Then the unfortunate man replied, "The thought of escaping from this dreaded place consumes those who are tortured here, yet it is said that no one has ever succeeded, for never are we free from our chains for a single second. I have heard, however, that there are three entrances. One is in the mountain where you entered, another is hidden in the desert, where Korah rebelled and was condemned, and the third is in Jerusalem." From what I have heard, the place where you entered does not open from within. When the demons want to get out to do their evil deeds, they leave by way of the desert. But I tell you quickly, how can I find that place? The rabbi pleaded, for he knew the demons would soon return. "Seek out the rock from which the flames burst forth. That is the source of the fire of Gehenna. For now," there we in Gehenna. We got to look this up. "For know that you have reached the fires of Gehenna and nowhere else." And when Rabbi Zechariah heard this, even though he had known it must be so, he shook with fear. He whispered goodbye and was about to run off when the man said frantically, "Here, take my ring so that my family will know that you are telling the truth. But do not touch it with your fingers, for it will burn you to the very soul if you do." Then the man slipped the glowing ring off his finger where it had been burning into him without cease. When it fell at Rabbi Zachariah's feet, he bent down and used a rock to push it into the leather pouch he wore and ran off as fast as he could. And a moment later, he heard the chilling screams of the man who was being thrown back into the flames. He hid again, sickened by the acts of torture in the abyss, where worms crawled up and down their bodies as they hung helplessly, slowly devouring them, scorpions walking all over them at will, stinging them again and again with their terrible venom. Burning embers poured down relentlessly on those who could not even lift their hands to protect themselves, and everywhere there was a thick smoke, an acrid smell of brimstone that had overwhelmed him ever since he had entered that cursed cavern. Not in his worst nightmare could Rabbi Zechariah have conceived that the tortures of Gehenna would be so cruel, and he knew that if he did not find a way out quickly, he might well lose his mind. It was then that his eyes fell upon a great rock that spewed forth the rain of fire that fell everywhere. The demons, however, seemed oblivious to its flames, only the victims suffered its effects. And the rabbi knew that this must be the fountain of fire of which the poor young man had spoken. Now this fiery rock was near the ceiling of the cavern on the opposite side of the pit, and Rabbi Zechariah knew that he would be taking a great risk to go there. Yet he clung to the side of the cavern like a shadow, hoping beyond hope that he would not be sighted. And he found that the demons were so preoccupied with the pleasures of torturing that he was able to reach the fountain without being seen. Rabbi Zechariah climbed up as high as he could on the great rock from which the fire burst forth. It was so hot that his feet began to blister and burn. But through a crack in the ceiling of the cavern, he could see faint stars through the thick smoke. If only he could climb through that crack. With his last strength, he leaped up and clung to its edge with his fingertips. Slowly, he managed to raise himself until at last he climbed out, and a fresh wind carried off the stench of smoke and brimstone that he had breathed for so long. The rabbi felt great relief, but he knew he was still in peril. He quickly gazed at the world that stretched about him. It was a barren desert, a wilderness, although he could see dim lights in the distance. He dashed off as fast as he could and did not stop running until he was miles away. That night he slept in the open and was haunted by the most terrible nightmares he had ever known. But when he awoke up, he found that he was still a free man, and he gave thanks to God that he had not been trapped forever in that abyss. 2 days later, Rabbi Zechariah reached the city in which the sacrifices had taken place, and as he came into the town square, he saw that the great crowd had gathered. He realized at once that another victim was about to leap into the fire. Rabbi Zechariah asked one of the bystanders who it was, and learned to his horror that it was none other than the wife of the young man whose soul was being tortured at that very moment. The rabbi rushed to the platform and cried out for her to stop. She stepped back from the edge of the abyss, which she stood and regarded him strangely, for she recalled that he had been present when her husband had rejoined them. The crowd, however, was infuriated at this interruption of their sacred rites, and that Rabbi Zechariah knew he must convince them that what he said was true, and he would lose his life. Then, gathering all his strength, the rabbi stood before the angry crowd and began to speak. Hear me, for what I tell you will cause your blood to curdle. You believe wrongly that the woman who stands before you, who is ready to throw herself on the pyre, will not die there, but will go on to another kingdom and a better life. Know now that this is the direst falsehood. Never will you see this woman again. The one who will return is none other than the devil himself, disguised as his victim, come back to convince other willing victims to throw away their lives for eternal damnation. For that, not only other reward is what awaits all those who curse their souls by leaping into the flames. On hearing this, many devout believers within the crowd began to grow angry and started to jeer Rabbi Zechariah. And it was then that he recalled the ring the tortured man had given him. Quickly, before they attacked him, Rabbi Zechariah said, "If you do not believe me, let me prove to you what I say is true. For I myself have just escaped that abyss, and there I saw the young man who was the most recent victim. He was hung upside down and cast into a terrible fire that tortures him without end. That is his fate. He gave me his ring to bring back to his family to prove that what I say is true." From the crowd came shouts of the ring," mixed with more angry threats, and the woman who had stepped back from the edge of the abyss cried out, "Yes, let me see the ring, for there is none other like it." Then the rabbi opened the pouch and dropped the ring on the platform, where it glowed like a live coal, still bearing the flame of Gehenna. Rabbi Zechariah warned them to not touch it because it was white hot. But one man who thought him lying knocked the ring into a bucket of water brought there in case the fire got out of hand. The instant the ring hit the water, it began to steam and sizzle, and this continued without abate until the water was gone and still the ring glowed. When the people saw this, word began to spread, first a low murmuring, then screams of horror as they realized what Rabbi Zechariah had said was true, and that they had been victims of a hoax too terrible to imagine. The wife of the young man who had been about to throw away her soul, as well as her life, was convulsed with weeping, both for herself and her beloved husband, and the grief of the people soon turned to anger. and hatred, and they railed against the devil for deceiving them. Nor did any of them ever cast themselves into the flame again. After that, the devil had to use all his wiles to get any new souls from the city, for everyone there had been tricked by him once, and after that they were on their guard for all time. That's the 19th century Europe. So that's like the 1800s, y'all. That is wild as hell. Hey, Paula. Hey, I hope people will read about the fall. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So I think, listen, Paula, I think what's going on is, well, I think it's the willing, I think it's very Epsteinish, very Epsteinish, e-file-ish. It's e-file-ish. That's what we'll call it. E-file-ish. Yeah. Yeah. 1880s. A little, yeah. Not a lot's changed. You know? I mean, yeah, because the more things change, the more things stay the same. Right. Yeah, exactly. Mhm. What do y'all think about that? Let's see what's on the next one. See what the next one is. I think it's very telling. Rabbi Joseph and the sorcerer is the next one. Yeah. But I'm not going to take, no, that we need to look up what this Gehenna is, because I have no idea what that is either. Do you all know? Have you ever heard of it? Mm, it's like a lake of fire. I fell into a burning ring of fire. Yeah. And it burns, 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 this ring of fire. This ring of fire. Gehenna. It's ancient Greek and Hebrew. Gehinnom. But the spelling is Greek. It's a biblical toponym that has acquired various theological connotations, including as a place of divine punishment in Jewish eschatology. It's an actual place. Look, location in Jerusalem, south of Mount Zion. Zionish. Zionish. Gehenna. Gehenna. Yeah. The place is first mentioned in the Hebrew Bible as part of the border between the tribes of Judah and Benjamin. During the late First Temple period, it was the site of the Tophet. It's where worshippers engaged in a ritual involving passing a child through the traditionally the sacrifice. Let's go back. Traditionally, sacrifices have been ascribed to the god named Moloch. Right? Right? We're gonna pretend like, oh, that was then, this is now type stuff. Okay. Okay, where some of the kings of Judah had sacrificed their children by fire. Right. So this is a story. Yeah. I think this, yeah, this last story, the devil's fire. Devil's fire in this book. That is the story of when this happened. When they were doing this, and this rabbi probably replaced someone else and saying, "Oh, you can't do it." And they got to put a Disney spin on it, right? Got to put a Disney spin on the e-files. Mm, that's what I say. Disney spins. Okay. So here it is. Okay, it says this is a photo of a place that is recognized as a heritage site by the Council of Conservation of Heritage Sites in Israel. Interesting. Okay. So that's a 1631 map showing the Vallée des Esfons et Enon. Yeah. So it would be south of Mount Zion. Is that like the biblical hell? That is the Valley of Hinnom. So it was in this little bowl valley, it looks like. Look at that. Look at that. Mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah. It's very interesting because me and, what'd you say, Anna? So a pit of fire. Moloch. Yeah. Yeah, well, it was right there. Yeah, look what you find. Look. Oops, sorry. Look, Paula, I know that a lot of my connections and everything seems really weird and not make sense, but there is truth in these myths, right? There is truth, and they're telling us without telling us, like we know they've been doing it forever and ever and ever. Burning flesh, and yeah, right. This is just another retelling of it, and it's blaming it on the devil. It's blaming it on the devil. But what if, like when they're talking about burning all the firstborn sons, right? Why the firstborn sons? Why was that? If they're not doing it to the daughters, then it is a form of population control, is it not? And maintaining some form of control over the male population during ancient times. Who has jurisdiction over that? Who would be the persons to do that? That would be the midwives, right? Yeah. Yeah. And they're keeping it alive in their tales, right? That's how they do it. That's how all this gets done, is they're just retelling the tales in different ways and different spins. And that's why I've been trying to tell people too, with like media, with Disney. We just read The Finger yesterday. That's where they got The Corpse Bride from, the movie The Corpse Bride. So yeah, you just got, I mean, going into the future, how are they going to keep their ancient tales alive? They got to do it in modern ways, right? So, That's what I think's going on with it. It's also this guy henna is very interesting to me. Let me pull it back up. Get in there. There you go. Yeah, this is very interesting to me. Okay. In later rabbinic literature, Gehenna became associated with divine punishment as the destination of the wicked for atonement for their sins. See, why would you torture communities? Like, this is the ancient place of burning babies, and this is where you're gonna go. It's fictitious. We found the hell of the Bible. Where is our applause, y'all? Okay. The term is different from the more neutral term Sheol, or the abode of the dead. The King James Version of the Bible translates both with the Anglo Saxon word hell. Yep. So Anglo Saxon is hell. What is this? So it's an underworld place of stillness and darkness, which is death. Within the Hebrew Bible, there are few, often brief and nondescript mentions of Sheol, seemingly describing it as a place where both the righteous and the unrighteous dead go, regardless of their moral choice in life. The implications of Sheol within the text are therefore somewhat unclear. It may be interpreted as either a generic metaphor describing the grave into which all humans invariably descend, or an actual state of afterlife within the Israelite thought. Though such practices are forbidden, the inhabitants of Sheol then can, under some circumstances, be summoned by the living, as when the witch of Endor calls upon the spirit of Samuel for King Saul. The witch of Endor. We're going to have to really look at her, too. No, it's just all mind freaking games to control women and narratives. What are we doing? What'd you say? Oh, yeah, right. The Old Norse is definitely the cold, like far north cold. Far, far north cold. Right. The Witch of Endor. We got a bird, people. Birdman. There's more William Blake. Women can call spirits. That seems to be something that goes back into antiquity. Okay. So if you wanted to see, it was like somewhere here, maybe, as far as in Israel or Jerusalem, sorry. Right here it is. I guess that's all the pictures. Yeah, we already looked at them. We could probably. So the English name, look here. Look at the etymology. Are you still here, Paula? The Hebrew Bible refers to the valley as the valley of the son of Hinnom, or valley of Hinnom. And Mishnic Hebrew and Judeo Aramaic languages, the name is constructed into these two here, which mean hell. The English name Gehenna derives from the Koine Greek found in the New Testament. Looky there. Is that not? Where's my whip? Is that not where Hillman says the Hebrew come from? This Greek, I believe it is. Yeah. Geography, the exact location of the Valley of Hinnom is disputed. George Adam Smith wrote in 1907 that there were three possible locations considered by historical writers. East of the old city, today identified as the Valley of Jehoshaphat. The Valley of Jehoshaphat. Oh, wow. If we get in there. Oh, look. What was he said to say? Jehoshaphat. I will gather together all nations and I will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. Then I will enter into judgment with them there on behalf of my people and for my inheritance Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, and they have divided up my land. Let the nations be aroused, let the nations be aroused, and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat. For there I will sit to judge all the nations on every side. That's very interesting. Like like destroying ancient lineages burned in the valley of Jehoshaphat. Waiting place. You'll be damned. What? Did we have revelations, Paula? Did we have revelations? Yeah. This location is also referred to as Valley of Decisions. Look here, Paula. I hope this is helping your research too. The Valley of Decision. Valley of Decision, right? Where is it said? His inheritance. Mine. It's mine. It's mine. It's mine. It's mine. You shan't have it. It's mine. So, if you'll remember, that story had a lot to do with self sacrifice, too, didn't it? Self sacrifice, right? All right, so let's look up another one. Where did it say there was another one that was? Okay, right here we are. Within the old city, today's identification as the Tropehion Valley. Many commentaries give the location as below the southern wall of ancient Jerusalem, stretching from the foot of Mount Zion eastward past the Tyropion Valley to the Kidron Valley. Wow. This is a big telltale. Archaeology, child sacrifice at other Tophets contemporary with the Bible accounts of the reigns of Uzziah and Manasseh have been established, such as the bones of children sacrificed at the Tophet to the goddess Tanit in Phoenician Carthage. She is a consort of Baal Haman. Paula, are you listening to this? Hello, Naziah. Hi. We got Revelation Jehoshaphat. Oh, Paula, look here. Wait. Tanit. Okay. Pontic. was a chief deity in ancient Carthage. She is the consort of Baal Haman, as Amun is a local Libyan deity. So is Tanit, who represents the matriarchal aspect of Numidian society. They were the Berbers. The Berber population, in northern Africa, and whom the Egyptians identify as Neith and the Greeks identify as Athena. So these babies were taken. She was the goddess of wisdom, civilization, and the crafts. I think something happened. And I don't know. What are they talking about? Babies sacrificed, bones of babies, and why were they? What sex were they? What is going on? How does that tie into what's happening now? What is going on? Is that RH? Oh, yeah. Yeah, them. And then there's the ones in the Caucasus. Is that the top O negative? Because top O negative can supply blood for all. I'm not really sure. I got Ruksha. There's my Ruksha beads. Yeah, so that's all very deeply entertaining and intriguing to me going forward. Something to think about. Yeah, maybe you can sleep on it. Get you some sleep, Paula. Sleep on it and get back to me because I would really like to know more. Those deep connections. Because it all seems to be coming to a head, don't you? Yeah. So I would like to continue this until we get through it. Let me go. We are on page, which one are we on now? After the Devil's Fire. Page 84. Yeah. I don't know how many pages, but let's see where else. All right, right here's where we are. Rabbi Joseph and the Sorcerer. And then we've got all these, and they're really short stories. So, but it's helping to put a lot together. For sure. Ask questions in your dreams for them to be revealed to you, Paula. We'll get there. Like the turtle, slow and steady wins the race. Absolutely. All right. You all have a good Tuesday, and I'll probably be here again 8 a.m. in the morning reading some more of these Jewish tales.